Hi, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back. In this video, you will learn what is UiPath Data Service and what is the benefit of UiPath Data Service. Why should we use data service? So let's start. UiPath Data Service. So let's open UiPath Orchestrator first. From this UiPath Orchestrator, click on these options, and then from the more options, you will see here one option called data service. If this is not enabled, you can enable it from the admin page. So let's click on data service. Okay, so this UiPath data service looks like this. The main page showing entities. It has all these tables. Basically, entities are called tables. So the word data service, data is that records the data related to anything. Anything means your vendors, your customers, your employees, students, your support tickets, anything, any data that you can store here, that is called UiPath Data Service. Now let's go through the definition first, and then we'll go step by step here. UiPath Data Service is a scalable, cloud-based platform integrated within UiPath that enables users to define, store, and manage structured data efficiently across automations. It provides a secure and centralized location for data storage, allowing easy access to data throughout automations without the need for complex databases or external systems. Now let's understand this UiPath Data Service in a simple word. UiPath Data Service is like a cloud-based database where you can store and manage your data easily, and this can be accessed from your UiPath automations. Basically, this can be accessed from other UiPath products like UiPath apps, UiPath Studio, etc. It helps you save data like customer information, product details, customer details, your support tickets, your vendor details, or any records that you use in your automations, all in one central place. Here you can see we have multiple entities, customers, employees, students, support tickets. So these are called tables. These are your entities. So you can store all this here, and this is available here on the cloud.uipath.com. It means this can be accessed from anywhere. I will give you an example related to the automations that you do in your company. Let's say you are working in a company and you are onboarded to a client project, or you are planning to do that. Now let's say you have a process where you have to work on the SAP automations or any vendor related records that you are going to automate. Now there, while automating, there is a need where you have or you need a reference file. Basically that is called a mapping file, right? The mapping file looks like, let me show you that Excel file. So let's say that mapping file looks like this: vendor ID, vendor name, address, phone number, email address, payment terms, currency, contact person, tax ID, registration date, status, bank account number. So these are the mapping details that business has to provide, the customer has to provide. And every month or bi-weekly, or you can say every year, this mapping file will be updated. The business has to provide this updated record. So let's say currently business has provided this record from 1 to 10, 1001 to 1010. Now after some time they realize that they want to add some more vendors here, so that board can work on that and get the latest vendors details, and board can process that. Now for that, users, the customers, basically the business users, has to provide the updated this vendor details to the support team, to the UiPath RPA support team, or to the developers, so that they can update this Excel file, and then board can access this and work on that. Now the requirement is that board has to search with this vendor ID in this Excel file, in this mapping file you can say, or reference file, and then board has to find the vendor name, because this vendor name is not available anywhere in that application which bot is going to process for the vendor automations. And then it has to also fetch the email address. Here we have a contact person. So whenever the people is going to leave that company, so that contact person will be also changed. So business has to update that. Now again we have a tax ID, we have a status. So sometimes this vendor 101, this can be currently active, but this can be inactive also. So business has to update that. Now how they update? They send an email to the support team. They say that okay, for the vendor ID this should be updated, the status should be active. Or they say okay, now the payment terms need to change from net 30 to net 45 or net 60, or the contact person needs to change, or they want to add few more vendors. So let's say they will share details like 1011 and then the vendor name ABC industry, like that, and then all the details. Now every time whenever they will share that details, the support team will have to update that Excel file, and then bot will use that one. Now what happens here, the problem is why we do not rely on this Excel file. I have noticed while processing this Excel file using bot, sometimes we get this error, the file is corrupt and cannot be opened. Now due to this, that time bot will throw an error. And now every time whenever we'll get this error, every time like we face the same issue, it will be like always bot will throw this error and then it will mark a system exception, right? Now sometimes we get this type of issue, Excel cannot open this file because the file format or the file extension is not valid. Verify that the file has not been corrupted and that the file extension matches the format of the file. Actually that Excel file is actually not corrupt. It was okay, it was fine that time when we updated. Now after some time when bot is using that, we get this error. Sometimes we get this error, the file format extension this is not matched, so file could be corrupted or unsafe. This type of error message we get. Now so because of this, we do not rely on updating these vendor details in the Excel file. Now what we can do? Now if you don't want to use this Excel file, now you will be thinking that why should I go with the data service? We can use database also. Okay. Now if you are planning to use the external databases, let's say SQL Server or MySQL or Oracle, then for that you have, or there is a separate team required to maintaining this database, like for this SQL Server to take a backup of all these things, again for database maintenances, the server maintain everything. Even you have all this team set up already and you are using this SQL Server, then you should have the knowledge of SQL query so that you can write it and you can get it. Now let's say you know that, but sometime what happens, I face that also. While establishing a connection between the server, SQL Server and UiPath, we get an error like fail to establish connection between to the server, something like that. If you can relate this exception from your project, then you will able to understand that. Okay, so Excel is also not reliable, the server is also not reliable. There are multiple things that you need to take care, the updates and everything you need to do. Now you are working on UiPath project, UiPath automations. Now UiPath has given here on platform this one service that is called data service, that you can use it. Now why will be using this data service here? One more thing. So if you have the data, if you have this vendor data in Excel file, then you know that this can be corrupted, your data will be corrupted again and you don't have the backup. So this will be corrupted, you will not able to use that. So this is not reliable. Second thing, the database that you are updating, then business user cannot update this one. Now the benefit of using this data service, you can create a table called, create an entity called vendor master or vendor details, and you can add all these details here. let's say whatever you have in Excel file like ID, vendor name, payment terms, bank account, the address, city, everything you can store here. Now whenever business has to update the data service, update the details, let's say they want to add one more vendor ID, then no need to reach out to the support team. Business users can directly update that data to the data service. They can add, edit, delete, modify, anything they can do here. They can directly open that customers, that specific, they can add the field, they can add the data, they can delete that, right? So they can do that one, and this is accessible from anywhere because this is available on the cloud. So this is the benefit, and now it is secure. This is also secure. The Excel file was not secure, but this is secure, and this is also very easy for UiPath automations, that bot to get the records from here, to get the details from this entity and then update that whenever required. Now let's understand the key benefits of using data service. This is centralized data. So vendor details are stored in a single location accessible by all the bots. It means that can be accessed from the client location as well. The client, the business users can also update that vendor details there. Real-time updates. So no need to wait for Excel file updates. Business team can update data directly in a data service. Scalability. So as the vendor list grows, the data service can easily handle larger data sets compared to the Excel file. In the Excel file, you know that if we have lots of data added there and multiple formats are there, then this will be corrupted, right? But here, if you have thousands of records available, no problem, you can easily add the data and it can increase the size, right? So it has the capability to handle larger data sets. Accuracy. So it reduces the risk of using outdated data or human errors in the file handling. So in Excel file, if you are updating, might be that is not saved properly, because if you are using OneDrive and that is not synced properly, so it will be that outdated data, right? Or business share that file with you, but you forget to update that Excel file, so that will be a problem. So you can reduce the risk of using outdated data or human errors. So business user can directly update there, right? And you can work on that. Or if business user is sending an email to you, then you can also work on that and reply to them. Same way, if you have any other automations, let's say there is a attended bot where bot has to get details of customers, check their tickets if not there, and the agent is on the call, and then he is asking the name of that person who is calling. Then bot will directly update that customer name and details, and then if there is any issue, bot can create a ticket and then update that entity with the records. Now next time when the customer is calling again, then bot will have access to that data service and it can directly access that the ticket number, ticket details like a status, like that is resolved or not, the person name, everything. And then if that issue resolved, bot can also update that the resolution, like issue resolved like that or issue pending. Bot can directly update to the data service, and it can access, update, everything it can bot can do. This data service can be also accessed from UiPath apps. You will have seen that we have controls available there, like text boxes, drop downs, labels, those things we have available. So we can directly access the data from data service, we can update, we can fill the drop downs there. So this data service is very important and very easy to use, secure, and it's available on the centralized locations on the cloud. Okay, so here we are on the UiPath orchestrator. Now you have to navigate through these options and then go to more option, click on data service. This is the user interface of UiPath data service. Now one more thing, so if you are not getting option here, this data service, then how you can enable this?
Click on this option, click on admin. Now click on your tenant, click on services. Somewhere you will see the data service. I can see here data service. You need to click on three options, and if it is disabled then you need to enable it. Just go here, click on data service. Now this is UiPath Data Service user interface. Let's go through all these options which is available on the UiPath Data Service page. Top right side you can see the first one, that is API access. If you click on this, it will open the API access wizard. If you can see here, it has the option copy API link and then download OpenAPI file JSON. This is useful if you want to integrate data service with other systems or you want to use the API to manipulate your data directly. Let me show you here. So click on copy and then let's go to Notepad, paste here. Okay. Now the second one, we have download OpenAPI file JSON. Let's download that and let's see how does it look like. Let's open this. Okay, so this has been now opened. Now we'll go to the next one. We have this manage access. The manage access icon, if you click on this, it will take you to the administration page where you can assign or create roles to control who can access and manage your data service entities. And it's an important feature for maintaining the data security and assigning the right permissions. From the roles you can see we have administrator, data reader, data writer, designer. From right side, if you click on this I, that means view permissions. You can see administrator has access to manage that, to manage permissions. Administrator cannot view all schema. Administrator cannot customize all schema and no access to the data, right? So administrator can only manage the permissions. So while setting up the permission, while giving the access, you need to take care of that, like which type of access that you are giving to that user. Data reader. So data reader, that role, that person who has the data reader role assigned, that person can only view all the schema and read access for all entities. Same way data writer. So data writer basically view all schema, complete read and write access for all entity. Designer. So view all schema, customize all schema, and then data access permission no access, manage permission no. Now go to role assignments. Here you can see everyone has is a data reader. So this data reader assigned to everyone. Now data writer assigned to the automation users. Administrator, designer and data writer assigned to the administrators. Designer and data writer assigned to the citizen developers, and then data writer and designer assigned to the automation developer. So if you're going to use this one, you can assign yourself into any of this. Now let's go back to the main page. So these are like help button and the notification, then profile. These are not a part of basically only of data service. It is common. Now third one is manage choice sets. The manage choice sets, this button opens the choice set page. Here you can create and manage the choice sets. There is already a user type available here. If you click on that, you can see the multiple user type available. So application, group, robot and users, it's all a type of user type, and it's choice sets, you can see. So you can create from here. We'll go back to the main page, main screen, little bit here. Okay, now we have fourth one, that is create new entity. Create new entity button is one of the most important button which is used to create new entity. Click on that, enter the name, display name, name, description, and then create entity. You know that you can think about like a third table which can store the structured data. It's like a database table. Now the fifth, that is search. This is where you can quickly search for a specific entity. So you have list of entities available here and you want to search for any specific one. So you can just type here that I want to search for support tickets and you can search and get it. The sixth option, that is import and export. Click on that. We have option export schema and import schema. Now what is this schema? This allows you to either import an entity schema from a file or to export the schema of an existing entity. And this is particularly useful when you are migrating or sharing the entity structure between the different environments or projects. Now, next one we have use in Studio. The documentation of how to use this UiPath Data Service. We will click on that, it will redirect you to the Studio user guide. Now the next we have refresh button. The refresh button is used to refresh the current list of entities, which makes sure that you are seeing the most up to date information, especially if changes have been made by the others. Now here in this table you can see all the entities, customers. So the entity display name, the name of the entity, description, number of fields we have in that entity, number of records we have in that specific entity, the last modified. So this was the overview of UiPath Data Service user interface. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, we discussed user interface of UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to learn how to create entity, how to update entity, how to delete entity. We'll talk about field types, how to add field to the entity, how to update fields, how to delete fields, how to add records to entity, how to update records, and how to delete records within the UiPath data service. So let's move to UiPath data service. So this is UiPath data service. We'll be using a practical example by creating an entity to store vendor details. So let's get started. Here on the entity page, we can see any existing entities that we have created. Since we are starting fresh, so this page is currently empty, but only default entities created here, that is system users. So without any delay, let's create a new entity to store the vendor details. To create a new entity, click on the Create New Entity button at the top right corner. Now we'll fill out the details for our new entity. Enter a display name for our entity, vendor details. Make sure the entity name is clear and descriptive. The entity name is automatically populated with the same value provided for the display name. Now after that, if you want to change the entity name that is different from display name, you can do that. Vendor master, you can keep it like this. Display name and the entity name can be different. You can modify here while creating the entity. But once you create an entity, this entity name cannot be modified. You can update the display name, but name cannot be modified. Now enter the description if you want, but this is optional. Now we have a checkbox, create another. If you select this checkbox, this helps you create multiple entities faster. So we'll be just creating only one here. Just click on that. Now once we'll create, you can see here the display name, the description, number of fields we have. So you can see here 5 fields is already there. But why? We have not created any entity here. So how this is possible that 5 fields already exist inside this vendor details entity? Click on this. You can see here the 5 fields, that is system built-in fields, that is created here. We have ID, update time, create time, updated by, created by. And this cannot be modified. This cannot be deleted. Okay. Now let's discuss about how to modify the entities. Once you'll mouse hover on this, you will see here the system users are created by default and this cannot be modified. System entities cannot be edited or deleted. But this one which we have just created, this can be edited or deleted. So let's click on edit so that I can show you how to modify that. Now you can see here only display name and description can be updated. We'll click on more details. You can see here created by, created, last modified by, last modified, this date time, number of fields we have, number. Let's close this. Now you can only modify display name and the descriptions. So let's put here the same name, vendor master. Okay. So this way you can edit, you can update the entity here. Now I will show you how to delete the entities. So let's create one temporary entity so that we can delete it. Delete entity. Let's copy this, create this. Okay, so we just now created this one. Now I want to delete that. So to delete it, you can mouse over on this and you can go right side here. There is a delete button. Click on that. Once you click on this delete button, you have to type that entity which you want to delete, just to confirm that. So just paste that same name, delete entity. And now if you'll just mistake anything, then this delete button will not be enabled. Now put the same name and then click on delete. So this way you can delete the entity. Now I will show you how to add fields to the entity. Let's click on vendor master. Now we have two tabs here, fields and data. So we should be here on this tab, fields. So here you can see create new field, this button. Click on create new field. So again we have display name, name, type, that is field type. The checkbox, we have two checkbox, required, unique values, role based, field access, that is the toggle one. We have more details, then checkbox create another. Now in the display name you need to enter that field that you want to create apart from this. So let's open Excel file. So we need to add these fields here. So let's take vendor ID. So paste here vendor ID. Once we'll paste, enter that display name here, automatically that name will be added here without any space. You can see here we put with the space, but here it has taken without a space. If I'm putting one more, so see it's not taking that space here, right? Now we have to take the type, the field type, and that is text, number, yes or no, date, time, relationship, auto number, choice set, file. So these are the field types we have. So based on our field, based on our column name, the field name, based on the requirement, based on the data that we are going to store to this field, we can choose that field type. So let's understand all these field type first. So we have text. Text field type. This field is used to store text value like name, country, email ID, etc. We have number fields. So this field is used to store a numeric value. Number values can be positive or negative. You must specify the number of decimal places that you want to use, like 10 or 10.55. So if you say 2 decimal 2, so you can store 10.55. If you say 3, so you can say like 10.557. If you say decimal places 0, then you can set it like 10, 15, 20, like that, this value. Next field type is yes or no. This field is used to choose between yes or no value. Date time. This field is used to store a value that contains a date and time. A date picker can be used to select a date and time. Relationship. This field is used to create a relation between two entities. We'll talk about this relationship in another video in very details. Relationship, you know, our like we create a primary key and foreign key. Like we create a relationship between two tables. So here we can create a relationship between two entities, right? Choice set. This field is used to store a list of enumerated values from which one or more values can be selected. So you know choice set, there was a default choice set created on the data service page, that was user type, right? We'll be also we'll also talk about this in details in another video. File. This Field is used to store a file that can be PDF, JPG, Excel file, any type of attachments like auto number. This field is used to automatically increase the records indexes. So we have added vendor ID, display name and name vendor ID. We'll be taking it as a text. Now we have to decide this vendor type, vendor ID is required field or not. If you think that this is required, so yes, this is required. We need to enter vendor ID always. We'll be always getting this one 1 2 3 4 5 like that. So we'll be saying required. If you don't want to select, it's okay, but I say okay, this is required. Now unique values only, so yes, vendor ID is always unique. I can mark it here. Role based field access, so this, if you enable that, so it enables to restrict access to records. Roles must be updated to restrict the access. So if we enable this, so this data will be restricted and based on the selected roles, and that only that users can access this data for this vendor master entity. Click on more details. So for each field type, we'll have the more details here like maximum length, default value, description, etc. So here it says that maximum 200 lengths we can add here. Default value. So let's say if you are not passing any value here while adding the records to this vendor ID, then what should be the value as a data to that field? I will leave as it is because I don't want to add anything. Now check this checkbox because we have to add multiple fields here. Let me first click on save and then you will see this field will be added. So let's refresh this and now you will see here the vendor ID is created now. So display name, vendor ID, name, vendor ID, type, text, required, yes, is unique, yes, there is no description here, last modified it, this. Now let me click on create new field so that we can create other fields as well. And now I will be clicking on the create another checkbox so that like I can create these fields faster. And then now I will fast forward this video. Now we have registration date. So enter the date. So from the type we'll be selecting date time. Now if you don't want to store time, we have an option to exclude the time. So this is a very good options features that we have, that we can exclude the time. Save and fast forward. Okay, so now we have added fields, all these fields from the vendor master details. Now I will show you how to modify, how to update the fields. So let's say email address, I want to change that to email ID. So I can go to that specific field, click on this edit field, the pencil icon, and then here you can see I can change it to the email ID. But as I told you that entities, that fields, this once you create, this cannot be modified. Only display name can be updated. And then this checkbox you can check if you want to. So I can modify that. And I can say, okay, this is email ID is now required. I can say like this. Click save. Now you'll see here the field name is email address, but display name has been changed. So let me show you how to delete the fields from the entity. So I want to delete this bank account number. So I can go click on the more options and then click on delete. To delete this field, you have to enter that same name and now click on delete. Okay, now you can see automatically refresh and then field is deleted. Now let's add that so that we need that field. So let me create new field, paste that same name, click on save. Okay, so this has been now added here. Now it's time to add the data to this entity. So let's go to data tab. Here you can see there is a button add new data. or from the top right side, right corner, you can see add data. These buttons are used to add the records to this entity. So let's click on add data. You can see here we can add data row by row. So for all these columns, first row we can add here. Let me show you first here. So 1001, the vendor name, address, phone number, email address. Now you can see here wherever we have set as a required, you will see a star here. It means these fields are required. You need to enter the data here. Payment term 30, USD currency, contact person, tax ID, registration date. So we have 15th March 2020. So let's either you can paste it like this in MMDDYY this format, or you can take it from here. So 2020, so select from here 15th March, so set it like this, or you can change your data in that format and then just copy and paste here. Now the status, just paste here active, bank account number you can just paste here. So we have added the data for the first row. Now let me do it for one more time. So let's click on create another and let me do it fast forward. So let's click on save. Now you can see here the data has been added to this entity. Now let's go to the entity first here. Now refresh this. Now if you see here we have vendor master 17 fields, number of records 2. Click on that, vendor master again. Now you can see all the fields added here. We have 2 records added here. Now let me show you how to update the data, how to update the records. So let's say now I want to change that this one. So I can say okay, from XYZ corporation to XYZ industries. Okay, so click on that and change that. Just next to that record the data, we have a pencil icon, that edit one. You can click on that or edit, or you can directly click here, directly click on that data and then you can modify here. So this way you can modify. Now if you want to delete that records, how you can delete that? So let me show you how to delete the record. So second number, this record I want to delete, this is not needed. So I can check this checkbox. Now you can see this has been checked. Now I want to delete here. So I can click on this delete button. You can see here, click on that. And you can see that that data has been deleted now. You will not see anywhere. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In the last video, we discussed about how to manage entities. Now in this video, we'll be discussing how to use choice sets in UiPath Data Service. I will also show you how to manage the choice sets in the UiPath Data Service and how to apply them to our vendor details entity. So let's get started. Choice sets in UiPath Data Service are predefined lists of values that you can use to restrict the values allowed in a particular fields. They are especially useful when you have a set of standard options to choose from. Let's understand this definition in a simple word. A choice set in UiPath Data Service is like a drop-down list of predefined values. When you are filling out a form or a record, instead of typing something yourself, you have to choose from the options that are already set in the advance. And that helps ensure that only valid, consistent data is entered. Let's imagine you are managing a vendor information. One of the fields in the data could be vendor status, and you don't want users to type random status like approved or accepted.
Instead, you want them to select from a list of predefined options such as active, inactive, pending, approved, accepted, something like that. Now, this way, there is no choice of mistakes like someone entering ACTV as active or ACT or ACTVE, something like that, right? So, there is no chance of making the mistakes here. They will have to select from the choice from the drop down. Now, let's take one scenario. Let's say the board has rule to process only vendors with the status active. Now, if someone manually typed ACT in the records instead of active, then what will happen? The bot would not recognize it and then it might skip that vendor. But with a choice set, user can only select active or inactive or pending, which will ensure that the bot always gets the correct data and that will be processed. Let's go to the UiPath Data Service page. Here you can see Manage Choice Set. Here we can identify few choice sets. Let's check here. So we have payment terms. Payment terms we have net 30, net 45, net 60 like that. There are three choice we have. Three fields, three values. There are three values we have. It means we have a list of choice here. So we can make it as a choice. Second we have currency where we have USD, AUR, GBP or we can say INR. So there are multiple values we have. So this currency we can set a field type as a choice. We have a status, vendor status that is either active or inactive, right? So let's take here a payment terms first. So let's click on manage choice set. I will show you how to manage choice sets. Click on that. We already have a system built-in user type choice. If you click on that, it will show you the list of choice, the values, that is application, group, robot, users. You can add more. Now let me cancel that and we will create our own user defined choice. Click on that. Now we will take this payment terms, paste here. Now this is our display name. This is our payment terms choice set name. Now here we have a display name for the choice. So our choice is first net 30. So we'll paste here. Add one more choice for net 45. Add one more for net 60. So we have three values choice we have. So set of choice. Now if you want to see the names, so it will be like same as that without a space. Click on show name and you can see net 30, net 45, net 60, right? You can add multiple choice from here. Now click on more details and you can add the description for this choice. Now if you want to delete it, you can delete from here, right? Any record. If you think that this is wrong, so you can remove it from here. Now let's click on save. One choice set we have created from here. Now there is another way to add a choice sets. So let's go to the entities. And now you remember we created this vendor master and then we have filled here that payment terms and then we have currency and then status, right? So now I will go with the currency. So you can see here the current type is text. And now if I'm going to modify that field type, then this is not possible because we cannot modify that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove it for now so that I can create one more time. Okay, now from Excel file we'll copy this name and we will add a new field again, paste here, and now this time we'll change that type to choice set. So field type choice set. Now you'll learn here how to use this. Once you select that, we have
to select the choice sets. So click on that. Now we have two choice sets available here, payment terms that we just now created and second user type. Now I don't want to take any of these, so I have to create a new one. So I can create it from here. You can see here and then paste here. Now take USD and then go to this here display name, paste this time EUR, add choice, GBP, and then one more if you want, so I can say INR. Now I can click on save. Okay, so you learned here the way to add the choice. Add here one field, create new field, take this name currency, and then from here select the choice set, and now this time we'll be selecting the choice set as a currency. Here we are getting option to allow multiple selections. It means the drop down which will have the option to select multiple, right? So if you want, you can choose that, click on that. Now click save. Okay, so this currency has been created with the choice set field. Go to the data and then let's search for that field, currency. Okay, now we have currency. There is no data here because that was not required field. Edit that. Now once we'll edit here, you can see we have list of values added here, that is as a choice. And now you can just choose it, select it from here. You cannot type anything, so I will say this is USD and this is updated. Now for the payment terms, you can see I can update here, but I have already created a choice set there, so I need to delete this field and then update again. So let me go to the fields and delete that payment terms because that is text. So let's copy this name, delete it. Now we'll be creating field again, payment terms, and select as a choice set and then select the payment terms. And now let me show you the multiple selection options and then we'll change that later on. This only I am doing so that I can show you how this looks like. Click save. Let's go to the data, refresh that, and you can see here the payment terms. We have options and we have the checkbox, so you can pass all this. You can see multiple selections. Now it has taken net 30 net 45. It means for this vendor payment terms is net 30 also and net 45 also. Now let me show you how to modify the choice. So let's go to the entities again, click on the manage choice sets. Now let's go to the currency. So we have currency, I want to modify that, so click on edit. Now you can see here only we can modify the display name and the list of that value we have added to that choice. We cannot modify the choice name. So if I want to change that from EUR to some other thing, let's say CAD, so I can update that. Okay, this is updated. Now let's delete some value from choice sets. So edit, and now I want to delete it. So I can, once I will click on delete, you can see removing a choice will clear it from the all the reference rows of existing data. So yes, there is no issue. So this CAD, if somewhere added in your records, in your data, in the entities, then that will be affected. It will be removed. So if you are okay with this, you can just click on save. If not, you want to undo this, so just click on this undo action, this one, right? Let's cancel this. Now we try to modify that, we try to remove that choice set. Now if you want to remove this choice set, that was choice, now this is the choice set, so let's remove this. Now you can see here once you try to remove it, it says that selected choice set is being used in the following fields and cannot be deleted. So it is being used in the this entity, so you cannot remove. Only you can remove if that is not being used in any other entity. So first you have to find out that entity, go to that entity, go to that field, choose this, delete this, because we cannot modify that field type, so we'll have to delete it. Okay, and now you can go back to the manage choice sets, and then we are okay to delete that. You can see, so we covered here what is choice set, how to manage the choice set, how to basically create a choice set, how to add the choice, the values to the choice set, how to edit, how to modify that, how to delete that, and how to use that choice set in our data, in our records. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, we discussed about the choice sets in data service. Now in this video, we'll be discussing about the relationship field type in UiPath Data Service and how you can use it to create relationship between the two entities. So let me show you the relationship field type first, and then we can move further. So let's say I'm going to this vendor master on this data service page, and I'm going to create one new field, and if you say anything here, then in the type you'll see one field type, that is relationship. So we'll talk about this relationship, how we can use this, and how we can create a link between, create a connection between two entities. Okay, so let's watch this video till the end, otherwise you will not able to understand. In between you learn something else, and then at the end you will learn something else, but this is very important topic, you should learn it. Let's understand what is a relationship field. The relationship field type is used to create connections between two entities in UiPath Data Service. It allows you to establish a link between one record in one entity and another record in the different entity. For example, we have two entities, vendor master and one we can say as a product master. So we can relate each vendors to its corresponding product or the purchase orders by creating a clear relationship between the vendors and their associated data. Now let's follow the steps to create another entity so that we can link these two entities like vendor master and product master. So let's follow the steps to create another entity and then create a relationship between the vendor master and the product master entity. So we already have a vendor master which we created by using this Excel file, this, right? Now we have another Excel file for the product master, this one. So we'll be using this data to create product master. So let's click on create new entity. Now we'll be putting here product master, and here we can say store product records. Click create. Okay, so this is very simple to create an entity. Now we have product master, so let's click on this. Now we have fields, so now we need to create fields for this product master. Create new field. We'll check this checkbox because we'll have to add 4 to 5 fields here. Let's do one by one. Product ID, we can take it as a text, and this is required, and then we'll click on save. Let's take another product name, take it as a type text. Now we have, you can see here, vendor ID. So let's understand first. So to create a relationship between two entities in UiPath Data Service, you need to use one unique identifier field, right, in the parent entity. So in the parent entity, basically your vendor master, where we already have a unique identifier as a vendor ID. That field, that vendor ID in the vendor master, that will work or act as a primary key that uniquely identifies each record in the entity. Now here in the product master, this vendor ID which we are going to refer from the vendor master, so this will be considered as a foreign key, and here we'll be selecting that as a relationship. Now once we select the relationship, then we'll have to choose the related entity. So which entity we are going to link? So we are going to link vendor master, and then it's asking for the related entity display field. So this is the display field name. So we need to link this vendor ID. So search for the vendor ID. So the top vendor ID. So we are going to link this vendor ID which is available in this product master will link with the vendor ID which we can say as a primary key in the vendor master entity. Okay. Now click save. So this has been created. Now let's create another also. So we have category text, click save. Now take price here, price, take here text, it's okay, click save. And now a stock quantity, quantity if you want you can take it as a number, save. Okay, cancel this, refresh this here, and now you can see here we have product ID, product name, vendor ID as a field type relationship, category, price, stock quantity. Now let's understand this first. So you can see here we have these two entities. This one is the vendor master and this one is the product master. This is going to be linked together where vendor ID we can say as a primary key, and then this vendor ID which is from the product master is this is foreign key. Now we'll create a relationship between two entities where this vendor ID and this vendor ID this will be linked together, and then we'll say a relationship. So relationship field type will be a vendor ID in the product master, that is child entity, and then vendor master is the parent entity. Now so you can see the difference, like here we created a relationship here for the vendor ID. Now how we can see the changes here, like how it's going to impact in the data. So you'll see here in the data, now we are going to add new data. So let's click on add new data. P01 office chair, this is the product name, vendor ID. So vendor ID is 1001, which is going to refer the first vendor ID from the vendor master entity. So this product is associated with this vendor ID. So here we have a drop down because we have selected the field type for this vendor ID is relationship, and then you can see whatever data that we have in the vendor master entity that is showing here, and then while entering the data you have to choose that. Okay, so P01 is going to linked with the 1001, this vendor. Okay, now if you think that no this should be 102, you can change it here, right? But as per the records I have to choose 1001. This vendor basically delivering this office chair. Category we can select as a furniture, price $120, stock 50. Now create another, save and create another. Okay, so let's take one more, P02 product name, vendor ID. So vendor ID will select 1002. So if you need to add these all vendor ID, so first we should have the data added to the vendor master. So if you need to add these data, sorry, these here in the product master, then we should have the data added to the parent entity, parent table, right? Then we can refer here. Otherwise you can start adding like P03, 4, 5 like that, but you can only refer to only these two records, right? So category will be electronics, 45 150. So it says that this product ID it belongs to this vendor. This vendor is, you know, uh, delivering these products like that. Now uncheck this and click save. Okay, so now we have added the data here. Now you can see here ID, product ID P001 office chair is going to link with the 1001, that vendor ID, right? Furniture, price, stock, quantity, updated by all these details which are the system built-in fields. Same way for P002 we have linked with 1002. If you are saying no, this P02, this Bluetooth headset, this this should be also linked with the first vendor 1001, because this is the supplier, this is the vendor that is going to supply this item also. If you think that Bluetooth headset and this both are related to the one vendor, then you can edit here. Now you can change that. You can select 1001. So one to many relationship like that, right? So this way you can create a relationship here. You can use the fill type relationship. You can create the relationship between the two entities. Now let's understand why this fill type useful. Relationship help you avoid duplicating data. Instead of storing vendor information of every product, you simply link the product to the vendor using a relationship field. It also helps in organizing data, as you can easily retrieve all products related to a specific vendor. As you can see here, we have linked here this vendor ID to these two product ID. So we can have multiple product ID which is linked to one vendor ID. I hope this is clear now. So hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, we discussed relationship field type in data service. Now in this video, we'll be discussing about the file field type in UiPath Data Service and how you can use it to store and manage documents and other files within that entity. Now let me show you the file fill type first, and then we can move further. Now we are on the UiPath Data Service page. First we'll have to open product master, because I'm going to show you here in this entity. Now let's click on create new field so that I can show you the field type, that file. Now you can see here the type. We have one that is file, and you can see the icon attached to that, that is attachment, right? So using that you can attach a file to that record in the entity. Okay, now let's understand the definition of this. So what is a file field type? The file field type in UiPath Data Service is used to store and manage various types of files such as documents, images, PDFs, and other media within an entity. It allows you to upload and associate the files directly with the records in your entities, ensuring that all relevant documents are stored in a centralized, organized manner within the data service. This field type is particularly useful when dealing with the scenarios where you need to link documents like contracts, agreements, invoices, photographs, any documents like PAN card, any ID card, and other type of file to the specific records in your database. Instead of relying on external file storage systems, you can manage everything directly within the UiPath Data Service, which enhances the data consistency and accessibility for the automations. For example, this is especially useful for entities like a vendor master, where we might need to store agreements, compliance certificates, or invoices for each vendor directly in the database. Instead of saving them externally, everything is staged within the UiPath Data Service. There are many practical scenarios where you will find the file field type useful. For example, we have an employee master entity and we need to store employees' photograph, their documents, etc. So we can store it there using the file field type. Let me show you how to use this file field type. So we'll be using vendor master, and then we'll click on create new field. Here we'll be taking like vendor documents, something like that. Vendor document. Now from the type, we'll be selecting file. Now click save. Okay. Now we just now created one field, that is vendor documents. Now we are going to store, or you can say upload the files to this vendor documents. We'll go to the data tab, and then you will see for 1001 we need to store some documents. So we'll just go right side, scroll here. You can see here for the vendor documents we are getting this icons that says here upload. It means you can upload the files from your computer. So for this one I'm going to upload one file. So select a file from the computer or drop a file, like you can drag and drop like this. So click on that. This invoice I'm going to attach to that specific vendor. Open. Now you can see this has been added here. Now click save. Now this has been attached to that records in the vendor master entity. I'm going to upload for the second one. So let's see. And then this time I'm going to take the second one, that is invoice underscore one merged, this PDF file. Okay, so for the two records we have attached two different PDF files, the documents for the vendors, and that you can access it from the data here. So this file field type is used to upload the files, store the files here in the entity. If you want to edit that, click on that. You can download it, you can remove it, you can change it. For the others, you are getting only clear the value, edit the value. Here we are getting three options: download, change and remove. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, we discussed file fill type in data service. You learned how to upload files to data service. In this video, I will show you how to import data using a CSV file in UiPath Data Service. And this is very important when you are dealing with the large data sets. So let's get started. So we have this product master. I'll click on that, go to data. From top, you can see there's import data. So using these import options, we can import the CSV file, like we can import all these records, like which we need to enter here, which we are going to add here. So all this data which is available in this Excel file, this can be imported directly to the data service, but this should be in the CSV file, then only we can upload. Basically, a CSV file, that is comma separated value file, is a widely used file format for data storage, where the information is stored in rows and columns. UiPath Data Service allows you to import data from CSV files into your entity. In the real world scenario, imagine you have to upload large sets of product records or vendor records, or your HR department regularly updates employee details in a CSV file. So instead of manually entering data, you can directly import that CSV file into the employee master entity, which will save time and ensure the accuracy. So let me show you how to use this import data and how to import data using CSV file. So first we have to prepare a CSV file, and there are few prerequisites that you need to first look into that, and then we will create a CSV file based on that prerequisite, and then we'll move ahead. To ensure the successful outcome of the import operation, your CSV file must meet the following prerequisites. The CSV file must be saved as one of the following types: CSV, that means star.csv, comma delimited file. Second, CSV MS-DOS. Third, CSV UTF-8. So these are the format of CSV files. Second, the column separator in the CSV file must be a comma. So you'll have noticed that in CSV we put like the pipeline, the separator. Somewhere you get a tab, like the multiple spaces. Somewhere you get a space like that. So that should be in the comma separator. The CSV file must be of maximum 10 MB. So if it's going to exceed the 10 MB, then you will not able to import that. So you'll have, if you have multiple data, then you have to just divide based on the file size. The CSV file must contain maximum 30,000 entries. So 30,000 entries, like very large data set, we can say. If it's still you think that you have more than that data, then you should separate it. You should split in a different file. Columns in the CSV file must match the display name of the entity fields. So that column should be matched with the display name, not field name, right? Columns in the CSV file must match the field data type. For example, for a text type field, the column in the CSV must contain text. You understood? Like if you have a field type that is text, then you need to only enter the text data. If you have a text type that is set to number and you are passing ABC the text, then there will be issue. Columns in CSV file must have values for entities field marked as required. For the field type, if you have set as required, then against that field you should pass the value. Columns in the CSV file corresponding to fields marked as unique in the data service must not contain the duplicate data. It means if you have set that field as a unique, then you need to always make sure that you are passing the unique value only, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Or it should be like 1001, 1002, 103. If you are passing like 1001 there also, and on the third record again you are passing 1001, then that will be a duplicate and that will be an issue. Importing is not supported for relationship fields, choice sets, and auto number field data. To enable data import, ensure these fields are designed as a not required. So whenever, you have learned in my previous videos that relationship fields and choice sets and auto number. So auto number basically sets automatically, it increases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And relationship fields that you remember, like we select from the from the drop down, and then it links the field in the other entity, or whatever value you are passing, that will be not updated to the data, right? For the choice set also, you remember, for choice sets we can only select from the drop down, right? We cannot pass from ourselves from the data. So that will be automatically, it will just go as a blank itself. So make sure that this should not be selected as required. This is not required, right? And the last, but this is the important, importing is not supported in the Mozilla Firefox web browser. So if you are using Mozilla Firefox web browser and you are trying to upload the CSV file, you are trying to import the data using CSV file, then you will get some weird message. You will not able to upload the data. So try with another browser. Now let's start importing the records. So we have these records. We need to create a CSV file. So this is .xlsx file, and we already have a product ID data for P01, P02. Now I'm going to append this data, like add this data to the product master. So we need to prepare a CSV file. What we can do, we'll click on file, click on save as, click on browse. So I'm going to select the download and then click on the save as type. Select from here CSV comma delimited. Click on that. Put here product master CSV and then click save. Save. Close this. Save this. Save again. It depends on your Excel or your system. Sometimes it asks you to save multiple time because of the format we are changing from Excel to CSV. Okay, now you can see here we already have this data, and this vendor ID is marked as a relationship field. You can see here relationship. Now let's go to the data, click on import data. So once you click on that, you will get a pop-up the window to select that file. So from the download we have product master CSV, and you can verify the data that it has the comma separator. right? And then you can match also the fill name that matched with the display name, right? So it has the spaces. Now everywhere you can see here we are passing that value 1012345 like that, but this will not be uploaded, this will not be imported to the entity records because we have set as a relationship. So you can verify once we'll upload that. So click open. Once you'll click open, it's starting uploading here. So bulk import successful. Now let's verify here. You can see here we have just now uploaded 20 records. 2 records were already available. Now we added imported 20 records using this CSV file, and everything has been imported till 22. Now you can verify the vendor ID, which is set as a field type relationship. It has no data, only we have to update this. So if you think that this should be some value, you can manually edit that. So click on this and select from the drop down like that. So we have successfully imported data from a CSV file into the UiPath Data Service. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey and welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to import data using a CSV file in the UiPath Data Service. In this video, I will show you how to resolve an error which we receive while importing the data using CSV file in the UiPath Data Service. So let's get started. You can see here, this is the error message that we usually get while importing the CSV file, importing the data using CSV file to the data service. That says here, failed to import, error code 400, message, bulk upload failed, unsupported file type application slash vnd.msxl, env, and there's some code. Now, by looking at this message, you can understand, okay, while uploading the file in the bulk, while uploading the data in bulk, we are getting error. And also unsupported file type. It means you are thinking that this is happening because of invalid file type. It means we are not using CSV file, we are using Excel file, right? Or some other, or there is some issue with the Excel file, with the CSV file, right? No, that is not the issue. To know this, please watch this video till the end, then only you will able to understand that. Let me show you first that error. So here, this is the entities on the data service. I'm going to select the same entity, product master, which we used to show the demo in the previous video. Now, we already have a data here, 22 records. Now again, I have 10 records I want to upload here using import data. So I'll click on import. And now let me show you that CSV file. So this is the CSV file that we are going to, this data we are going to upload. So I will select that, this product master CSV file, click open. Now here once we'll click on that, we are getting this error, failed to import. Error code 400 message, bulk upload failed, unsupported file type. Now let me show you that file which we are using. Okay, so this is the file that we are using, product master CSV, and the file type, you can see this is Microsoft Excel comma separated value file. This is CSV file. If you'll try to open this in the notepad, you can see here this is comma separated. You can also check this entity field. That field, this is the display name, right? There is a space you can see. So this is also correct. There should not be any space after that. Like it should match with the entity fields, right? So this is correct. The data that we are also passing, that is with the correct text, correct field type, right? So this is text, this is text, like everything. Only the last one, stock quantity, that was in the number. So we're passing here in the number. So there is no issue with the CSV file. If there is no issue with the CSV file, then why we are getting this error? So the issue is, you remember I showed you a prerequisite of using CSV file, prerequisite that you need to follow before importing the data. So we followed all this. Now the problem was here. The last one, importing is not supported in Mozilla Firefox web browser. That I mentioned that in the previous video, that this is very important to understand. You will not able to import the data using CSV in the data service using this Mozilla Firefox web browser. Now you will be thinking that, am I using this browser? Yes, I am using Mozilla Firefox web browser. Let me show you. Click on this, click on help, go to about Firefox, and now you can see here about Mozilla Firefox. Now, so how to resolve this? So to resolve this issue, you have to close this browser, then open another browser. So I'm going to open Chrome browser. Now we'll try with the same CSV file. We'll go to the product master, data, import data. We'll select the same CSV file, click open, and then you can see here the work in progress, and you can see bulk import successful. It has imported the data till P032. So by this way you can resolve this error and you can easily import that data. Hi, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to import data using a CSV file in UiPath Data Service and how to resolve any issue if occurs. In this video, we will discuss about import and export schema in UiPath Data Service. This can save you a lot of time when you want to share your entity structure across the projects or environments. So let's get started. We are on the UiPath Data Service page. You can see here there is an option import and export. Once you click on that, there are two options, export schema and import schema. Do you know what is a schema? A schema represents the metadata of every entity and choice sets holding information such as entity, fields data type, or relationship between entity fields. This is the skeleton of how data will be stored and organized. In simple terms, think of a schema like a blueprint of a building, which tells you how the building is structured, which rooms are where, and what kind of materials you should use. For example, in a vendor master entity, the schema would include like entity name, entity display name, entity type, entity description, all the custom fields that's a part of that entity with its structure, which will exclude the system built-in fields and system built-in entities. It includes the choice sets, etc. Now let's understand what importing and exporting a schema means in UiPath Data Service. You can see we have export schema. Exporting allows you to take the schema of an entity and save it as a JSON file. You can later import this schema into another environment or share it with team members so that they can replicate the same entity schema, same structure. When you export a schema, it is like exporting the structure of an entity. We have import schema. So importing means taking a schema file, the JSON file, and using it to create the same entity structure in a different environment, which ensure the consistency. This means you can import the same structure into another project or another environment, which ensures that the data setup remains consistent. Now let's start with exporting a schema. I will show you how easy it is to export an entity schema from UiPath Data Service. Let's click on export schema. Once you click on that, there is a confirmation pop-up, confirm export. This will export all entities and choice sets. So once you click on confirm, all the entities which and excluding system built-in entity will be exported as a JSON file. Click confirm. Let's go to the download folder. Your entity schema is now downloaded as a JSON file. Let me open this schema in the Firefox. You can see here we have three options: JSON, raw data, and headers. So in the raw data, you can see this is the same as like once you'll open that JSON in the notepad, but I will go with the JSON. All entities present in the tenant are exported here. You can see, let me collapse all this. So first entity you can see here, this is entities and choices. So there are two things exported here. Let's go with the entities. In the entities 0, so there are two entities you can find out here: product master, and then second one is vendor master, right? So basically we have only custom entity, that is two: product master and vendor master. So as I mentioned that system built-in entity and entity fields will be excluded in this export. Okay, now let's go with this first entity, product master. Let's click on fields. You can see here the complete structure of this entity has been exported. You can see entity name, display name, entity type ID, entity type, description, and then all the fields here. In the fields again you can see index 0, 1, 2, 3 like that. So field name, the product ID, is primary key, so no, false, is foreign key, false, is unique, false, reference type many to 1, SQL type and varchar, length limit 200 is required true. So you remember like we set as a true as a required is required option checkbox. We checked that. Display name, that field display name which has the space, you can see. Same way we have second field, that is product name. You can see everything, all the structures, then vendor ID, and then category, price. So all these fields with this fields type and all these things are exported here. Now let's move to import a schema. This import schema, this features is extremely useful when you want to replicate an entity from one environment to another or from one tenant to another. Instead of manually creating the entire structure again, you can simply export the entity schema and import into the production environment, and this saves a lot of time and ensures that there are no manual errors. I will click on import schema. I will select that schema that we just now exported, that JSON file. You can see JSON file. Click open. Now you can see the conflicts here. Confirm the entities and or choice sets to be imported. For those that already exist, the schema will be appended to the existing entity or choice sets. You can see two tabs here, entity and choice sets. So by exporting and importing that entity, you can export entities and choice sets. By importing also you can import entities and choice sets. Okay, you can see this warning message, this warning icon which shows that conflict. So why we are getting this conflict? Because we already have these two entities created, right? This payment terms, this choice sets also already available. That's why we are getting this conflict. If you want to only see the conflicting one, it will show you the list of entities which is conflicting. If I will click on checkbox, yes, both is showing here. Now if you want to import that, so you can see the schema will be appended. If you want to just import only one entity, you can do it. Let's say you want to import only product master, you can select that, check the checkbox, and then click import. If you want both, you can select one by one, or you can directly check it from here and then click on import, and this will be imported again, right? You can see here we already have these entity fields available and the data also attached to that. Now this I showed you with the conflicts. Now I will show you a phrase. So I have already exported the schema. Now I'm going to remove all these. So let's remove first. Okay, so now it looks like a phrase, or you can understand like this is a different tenant, different environment. You can say a QA environment or production environment. You have already completed your development. You have created that entity, that schema in your development. Now you want to create the same structure, same entity, choice sets, same fields into a production environment or QA environment for testing. Then you need to export that. So we have already exported the schema. Now it's time to import that schema in the QA environment. So understand, this is a QA environment. Now manage choice sets, and then I'm going to delete this as well. So I will say payment terms. Okay. Now we'll click on this and import schema. We'll go with the same JSON file, the schema that we exported. Click open. Now you can see here it looks like a phrase. If you'll check this checkbox, now we'll not be getting any entities here because we don't have any conflict. Let's click on that. You can see no conflicts with the entities, no conflicts with the choice sets also. Now I want to import. So first we'll import this choice sets because that is referenced with the one of the entity. So I will first import this, and now I will go to the entities. So import schema, and then go to the schema, go to the fields, import that. So now we already have that choice sets available. So I'm going to import this entities. Now entities also imported here, and you can go to this manage choice sets. You can see choice sets also available. If we'll go to the product master entity, and then all the fields we have, data will not be having here because data will not be exported with that JSON file, and you will not able to import that data. So that's how you import and export the schema in UiPath Data Service. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to import and export schema in UiPath Data Service. In this video, I will show you how to import and manage entities from UiPath Studio. This is a crucial step when working with the data service in automations, as it allows you to directly access your entities, interact with the data, and integrate it into your workflows. So let's get started. Before we jump into the process, let's understand what importing entity means. In UiPath Data Service, entities are used to store and manage data. When working with the automations, you often need access to this data. By importing entities into the UiPath Studio, you can easily access this data and use it in your workflow. For the practical example, we'll be using a vendor master entity that we have created here in the UiPath Data Service. Now make sure that your UiPath Studio is connected to the UiPath orchestrator. You can see from here, I have already connected this. It's showing in the green, and I have selected that folder, that is learning folder. Now, if you want to perform operations on the entities in the data service, you need to install the package called uipath.dataservice.activities, and that you can install from here, from the UiPath Studio manage packages. We'll go to the manage packages. We'll search here from the all packages, search for data service. Okay, so we are getting uipath.dataservice.activities. Let's install it. Now this has been installed. You can see the dependency uipath.dataservice.activities. Okay, now I will show you how to import the entities in this UiPath Studio workflow. On the top you can see manage entities. So from the manage entities you can manage all the entities. You can add or remove the entities. Same way that we have manage packages, so we can install, uninstall, update the package, everything that we can do in the manage packages. Now we'll click on manage entities. Once you click on that, you can see UiPath Data Service. Here you can see the list of entities that you have created in the data service. I need to work with the vendor master. I have to import only vendor master. So I will select that specific entity. Once you will click on this, the plus icon will be showing here. That says that this entity will be imported into your project, right? Third column that you can see is fields. How many fields that you have? So you can see once you will mouse over on this number, you can see all the fields and its type. Here we have records. Okay, now we'll click on save. Now, one more thing. You can see entities and then UiPath data service, that entity. Now inside that we can see vendor master and this system user added here. Why? Is because this is a system built-in entity that will be added along with this entity. Just leave this as it is and you can work with this vendor master. It has also added as a dependency and installed that namespace. You can find it from here. So let's say we are going to variable or arguments. So I'll go to the variable, click on that. Let's create one variable here. Go to the variable type, search, browse for types. Here you can search with that entity name. So let's search for the entity name as a vendor master. You can see the vendor master, this has been added as a namespace. Now once you import this, you will be able to access all the fields. So let me show you. Once you import this here, now you can see the variable type as a that entity name. Now after importing, you can access all the fields and properties of that specific entity that you imported here. Let me show you quickly. Let's take one assign activity and I will, in the value here, I will put here the variable name. So that was variable one. Now dot. Now you can see here once you'll select dot, you will see address, bank account number, contact person, created by. These are the properties. So everything, all the field names showing here as a properties: ID, payment terms, phone number, registration date, status, vendor ID, vendor documents, vendor name. Everything is accessible now here. So now you learned how to import and manage the entity in the UiPath Studio. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to import and manage the entities from UiPath Studio. In this video, I am going to show you how to create entity records in UiPath Data Service directly from UiPath Studio. It means now we are going to use all these activities that's a part of UiPath.dataservice.activities package. So we'll be using one by one activity. So in this video, I will show you one activity, that is create entity records activity. So let's get started. So we are on the UiPath data service. Okay, so before moving to the UiPath Studio, I want to show you here. So first, you should have the access to the UiPath data service and then create one entity so that you can use it for the practical example. So I have already created this vendor master. Now, if we'll click on that, so the way we are going to add the data, same way the records will be created in the data service from UiPath Studio. So let's add a new data. So let's say I'm going to enter here V001, vendor name ABC Corporation. These are not required fields, so I can leave as it is. But in the email ID, I can put like abc@gmail.com. Now here these are not required fields, so I can leave this. Now click save. So you can see here data has been added. Same way we are going to do this from UiPath Studio. So let's move to the UiPath Studio. If you have not imported entities in UiPath Studio, and if you have not installed uipath.dataservice.activities package, then make sure to install it first. So go to manage packages, install that package uipath.dataservice.activities package. Second, you can go to the manage entities and select the entity that you want to import and for which you want to perform the CRUD operation, CRUD. So I'm going to create the records here. Okay, so this has been imported. You can verify it from here. So this has been added and this is an entity. Now we are good to insert the records to the entities in UiPath Data Service. So we'll go to activities. We can search create entity records, or you can go by the packages. Expand this. The first activity, that is create entity record. Drag and drop to this workspace area in the main sequence. Now you have to choose the entity which is available, which is imported. Select vendor master. This has been imported. Once you will select the entity, this wizard will be displayed, or we can say this field view is displayed. So there are two options, one field view and second record view. So currently we are in the field view, which shows the first three mandatory entity fields. If you have less than three mandatory fields, then this wizard will display the mandatory field first and then non-mandatory fields after that. So I have already shown you in the data service that we had three fields marked as a required. We have email address, vendor ID, vendor name. So we have selected here. Now here you need to enter the value which you want to insert to this field in this entity. Okay, so let's say this time I'm saying that the vendor ID should be in double quotes V002. Vendor name, I'm saying this is, so we have ABC, now we'll say DEY corporation. Okay, in the email ID we'll say DEY@gmail.com. Okay, so we have added this. If you want to add few more records, the value to few more entity fields, you can click on add additional fields and you can select. If you want to add to all, you can select all, or if you want to choose any one, you can select that. So let me click add additional field, and now I'm going to choose status. Select that. Now status also added here, so I will say the status is active. If we'll go to the properties of this activity, you can see here the options. First, timeout millisecond, that is 30,000. So this is common for almost all the activities. The timeout, you know that it specifies the timeout in the milliseconds. That is the default is 30,000 milliseconds, that is 30 seconds. It is used to wait for the activity to run before an error is thrown. Second, we have related record depth. Now what is this related record depth? By default, the value is selected 2. And if you click on drop down, we have 1, 2, 3. This option determines how deeply the system will fetch and include the related records when creating or updating an entities. This is related to the relationship field type, where we create a relationship between multiple entities. Now in the output records, you can store this in the output. Now I'm going to run this activity so that I can show you how we can insert the records. After that, I will show you the second option, which is switch to record view. Do not go anywhere. Watch this video till the end, then you can understand this activity clearly. Okay, now let's run this. Okay, now this has been completed successfully. Let's refresh the data. Okay, now you can see here V002 DEY Corp, email ID, and then a status. Now Here, instead of putting the hard-coded value, you can take it from the variable, from arguments, and then you can pass it these value, right? Now we'll click on switch to record view. You can see here we have entity and then we are getting this input records. This input records where we can enter a syntax, enter an expression to pass the data. Now there is one syntax which is used to pass the value, like here. For one field you can type like new entity name with curly bracket dot fill name equals to value, then closing curly brackets. Let's type here. Okay, now you have to write like this, new your entity name. So I'm going to select vendor master. You can see this entity name. Now with space, with curly braces, open close curly braces. Now one space, once you'll give one space here, it will show you the list of properties here. So instead of putting dot here, I can directly select the specific field. So I'm going to select vendor ID. Once you select vendor ID, that dot will be entered automatically. Now let's type here equals to and then value. So V003. Okay. So this is for one records. You can see there is no error. Now if we need to pass multiple value to the records to the multiple fields, then how can we do that? So to insert multiple records to this entity, we have to modify this expression. So now the expression is this, new entity name with open and then close curly bracket, then dot and then fill name 1 equal to value 1, comma, again fill name 2 equal to value 2, and so on. Now let's open this in the advanced editor. Press comma. Once you press space, it will ask you to select other field. You can see property vendor master dot address. So vendor master that we have already selected, and then now we'll pass the other field. So vendor address, so now we are going to pass vendor name. So let's search for vendor name. Okay, equals to vendor name is now XYZ, comma. Once we'll press space here, again it will ask you to select the field, and then you can see dot is automatically getting added here. Now third one, I'm going to enter the that required field, that was email address, equals to, again in the double quotes, because this field type is set as a text, that's why we need to pass in the double quotes. Now in the email address I will say xyz@gmail.com. Okay, let's click save. Okay, now we are going to run this. So click on run. Now this time V003, that records will be added here. Okay, so let's move to the data service. Refresh this and you can see here V003XYG, the email ID added here. So you learned here how to use switch to fields view and how to use switch to records view. You learned how to put the expression in the input records, how to create entity records from UiPath Studio directly. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to use create entity record activity in UiPath. Now in this video, I'm going to show you two things. First, I will show you how to create multiple entity records in the data service using create entity record activity. Second thing I'm going to show you that how to use create multiple entity records activity in UiPath. For the first one, I will use the previous activity which we have used, that is create entity records, and after that I will show you the another activity, that is create multiple entity records. So I'm going to show you some practical examples so that it will help you to understand. So watch this video till the end, otherwise you will not able to understand. Now let's get started. So as you can see here, we have three records available in the vendor master. Now we want to create multiple records in the bulk. So let's say we have an Excel file, we have 100 of records there, and I want to get all this data and then add those records in the vendor master entity at once. So how can we do that? The first way I'm going to show you using that create entity record activity. Okay, so here you can see previously we used create entity record and we entered that expression in the input records and it inserted the data, right? Now I have one Excel file which has around 10 vendor records which we are going to use to insert or create entity records here. You can see here we have around 10 records and we are going to add this vendor name, email address. So currently I'm going to consider three columns. First, we have to read this Excel file because we have this data in Excel file only. So we have to read it. So to read this Excel file, we need to write here read range workbook. Okay, we can use read range as well, but we have to use Excel application scope for that. I'm going to directly use this read range workbook. Now here we'll be passing that path where we have this vendor master Excel file. Okay, now seat name. So we have seat 1, you can see, and then I'm going to create one data table variable control K dt underscore, this is vendor master. Okay, now this has all this data available from the Excel file. Now to insert the data there, we have to take for each row. This one will take. Now we'll move this create entity records here. So this I'm going to show you, that is as simple, right? Now let's pass here the data table name, that variable name dt underscore vendor master. We have current item as a current row. Now what we are going to do here, we are going to replace this value with the variable. Okay, so in previous video you didn't learn that, right? Now I will show you how to pass the dynamic value, how to pass the variable here. So we'll pass here current row of open close bracket double quotes. We'll be passing the column name. So this vendor ID. Okay. Now we need to convert this to the string. So we'll convert with the to string. Copy this expression so that I can just replace here. Now in the vendor name, we'll be pasting the same. Only we'll replace this with the vendor name. Now we'll move to the email address. We'll paste here the same expression. We'll just change that with the email address. Okay. Now if you want to include few more columns here, few more fields, you can add here. For the practical example, for this demo, I'm just going to show you 3 columns, which is required field, right? Now let's click save. Now you know that the process, what's going to happen here. Let me explain that. So first it will read this Excel file data stored in a data table, and then we'll use a for each row in data table which will loop through each row from the data table, and then it will be stored in the current row. Now here we are passing the current row of that column name, so each time each row will be in the loop, it will pass the value here and then it will create the entity. Now let's close this Excel file. and then let's run that. We'll keep refreshing here so that I can show you one by one data is getting added here. So let's see. Okay, so 456. Okay, so it worked fine. Now let's go to the data service, and you can see here data has been added till V013. It means 10 records have been added here, right? So this is the one way that I have shown to add the multiple records to the entity, create multiple records to entity. Now the second one which we are going to use, that is using the create multiple entity activity. Okay, so let's delete all these 10 records and just keep V0123. Okay, now click on delete, just delete all these things. Okay, now we'll be using that create multiple entity records activity. So let's drag and drop the create multiple entity records. Okay, now what is the use of this activity? This create multiple entity records activity is used to create multiple records in bulk for the selected entity in the data service. So we'll click on this entity, select that entity. So why we are only getting this vendor master here? If you see here in the data service, we have 1 and 2 custom entity we have, but still we are getting only one. Why? It's because from the design tab, from the manage entity, we have only imported vendor master. If you import this, you will have access to import to use this as well. If you are not sure about all these things, just go with the previous videos. We have a series of video for this UiPath data service. Just start with the first video. Okay, now here it seems like we need to pass a collection of record. If we'll click on this advanced editor, you can see it requires in argument I collection vendor master. Now what is this vendor master? This is entity. Okay, so collection of entity, that vendor master. Okay, so it expects only collection. So here no need to use this for each row. We are going to take one assign activity here. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to first read this Excel data, store in a data table, and then we'll convert this data table data to the collection directly without using for each row. We are going to use, can you guess here? Okay, let me tell that. So we are going to use link queue. So first we have to create one variable which will store the collection of data. So if you're not sure what will be the variable type for this collection which can store here, you can do one thing. You can enter that desired variable name which you want to use. So I will say entity collection and then press enter. Now this will create one variable. You can see the type is I collection of vendor master, that is system.collections.generic.I collection and then UiPath data service.vendor master. Now we'll pass this here entity collection. Now what value we are going to pass, that you need to carefully look at this. So we are going to use this expression, that is from row in that data table name dot as enumerable select new vendor master, that entity, with curly braces dot that column name equal to that value, the field name field 1 value 1, field 2 value 2, comma field 3 value 3, and so on. And after that, after closing this bracket, dot to list. So we are going to convert this data to the list. So let me paste here. Okay, now let me open this in the advanced editor. This is a data table that we are going to use, and this as a for each row, so you know that current item is row, or you can say current row, and then that you need to pass here current row, and these are uh, just a field name from the data service entity, and this is the column name which is coming from Excel file, this one. So this should be matched with the Excel file or like your data table columns. Okay, if you need to add few more, you can just pass here same way, copy this, comma, paste that. Or what you can do, after pressing comma you can press space. Let's say you pressed one space, still you are not getting this, you will press one more time, and then you will get this options, and then you can select that. So let's say now I need to update the address. You can see dot address is added here, and then you can put like equals to, and then this row of address. Same way you can do that one. Okay, now we'll go with only these three fields. Let's save this. Okay, so only few things we are doing. Let me delete this data table is not required. Only we need read range workbook activity, which is going to read the Excel file and store in the data table. Second, we are going to use assign activity, which will pass it to the collection, and then this collection will be passed to this input records, and then it will be added, like it will create multiple entity records in a bulk in the UiPath data service to that entity. Now just go to the properties of this activity. You can see here we have timeout. So you know that timeout and related record depth that we covered in the previous video. Now we have continue batch on failure. This specify if data service should continue processing the remaining records when a record fails to create. If it is set to false, then it will stop that process even after the first failure. Okay, I will set it true, no problem. Here in the output, you can create a variable, you can store this here, and you can use it further if requires. Now we are good to run that. So let's run this. Let's go to the vendor master, data. Now let's refresh here. Let's refresh this, and you can see here we have all these records available, right? So we have successfully inserted 10 records using this create multiple entity records activity. You learned how to use create multiple entity records activity, how to convert data from data table to collection. Okay, how to use collections in the create multiple entity records. You learned how to use create entity records and then entity records in bulk using create entity records activity. So hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to create multiple entity records in UiPath. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use query entity records activity in UiPath. So let's get started. Let's move to UiPath Data Service. Here you can see we have lots of records available here in this entity vendor master. There are many scenarios where we have to get these records so that we can use that data further in our automations. Let's say we are going to delete items, we are going to delete this record, then we need that specific ID to delete it. If you know about that get transition item, so first we are getting the transition item, and then we are either processing that, we are deleting that, we are changing the status of that item. Same way here as well. If you want to use this records in your process, in your automations, then first you have to understand this query entity record activity. So I have shown you how to create the entity records, right? Now we have populated the data in this entity. So here I will show you the use of query entity records activity, which is used to retrieve a list of records for the selected entity from the UiPath Data Service according to the specified filters, which you can use later for the further automations. Additionally, we can apply filters, sorting, and define the maximum number of records we want to retrieve. So before that, you need to set up the entity in this UiPath Studio. You need to create the entity, create the fields, add the records. If you have already done these things, then that's good. If not, please watch the previous videos. So now we have this UiPath Data Service activities. We have covered two things: create entity records, create multiple entity records. Third, we are going to use query entity records. Let's drag and drop here. Now we have to choose the entity that we have imported here. There is no other way to pass the entity. We cannot use config, we cannot use variable here. This we can only select from this drop down, right? You can see this query. This is optional. This is only required when you want to add filter. You want to retrieve the specific records. Then only it is needed. So first I will show you without changing anything. Just select the entity and try to run here. Okay, so let's step into here. Okay, so you know that we have 12 records in the data service in that specific vendor master entity. So you can validate output from the locals. You can see we have the multiple options we have here. Sort by field selected ID. I will show you all these properties for this activity. 12 records retrieved here. In output, you can see output as a I list of vendor master. It means that entity. If we'll click on that, we can see here 12 records, and this is in the collection. You can see here all these records, email address, payment terms, phone number, everything has been fetched, right? Basically, this is like select star from table, where the table is our entity. So we are not putting any where condition. It means no query, no filter, then it will give you all these records. Now we'll go with the specific records. Okay, so let's stop this now. Now click on this, go to the properties. Okay, you can see we have options: sort by field. We have a list of fields which is a part of this entity. So you can sort based on the field. You will select here. So I will say based on the vendor ID, my data should be sorted. It's like V01, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that way. Sort ascending. Do you want to sort this ascending order? You set true, then yes. If false, it will be in the descending order, like that. Top hundreds, how many records do you want to fetch? Next is skip. So how many records you want to skip? So it helps you skip the number of records. Timeout, related record depth, you know that. In output, we have total records. So it will give you the count of that records that is retrieved. So it's like 12 records. Output records, it will give you the list of records, the data that is fetched from the entity fields there. Okay, now we'll go with the query. I will show you how to add filter, how to add query to this entity so that we can retrieve only our desired data, desired value. So click on this, open the advanced editor, and this is filter builder. We have query entity records. Here we have all this list of fields available. I want to only get based on the vendor ID. So I want to filter here that vendor ID equals to vendor ID equals, I can put my specific vendor which I need. So V012. Okay, so I want to apply a filter on this whole entity records, that I want only the data where the vendor ID equals V012. we have options. We can click on add entry, and then you can choose here you want to apply or condition and condition for all. You can put it like this way. Let's go with the or. Now we'll say vendor ID equals V012, or I can say email address contains X, Y, Z. Okay, put it in the double quotes. So it will give you only those records where the vendor ID equals to V012 and the or email address contains XYG. Okay, now click save. We have added the two filters we have added to this query, right? Now I can take it here in the output records. Control K, I can store here, and I can say output records. Okay, now let's click step into step into. Okay, now you can see here sort by field vendor ID. We have total records 3. Output, you can click on this, and now you can see, sorry, click on this and maximize this. Now you can see here the first record that is coming from here to this, right? So this is the first record. Now this is the second record till this. After comma, we have third record. So we have 3 records here. Now you can see here first one we said like we need V012, V012. Okay, so let's check vendor ID equals to V012. So V03, why? Because we have email that is, sorry, not this one, email address which has XYG. So the first record selected. Second records, we have vendor ID V05, but email address has XYG Corp, right? It contains XYG. Third, we have V012, right? And the email address is different, but our requirement was to filter one where the vendor ID equals to V012, right? So we have 3 records. So I hope you learned how to use query entity records, how to retrieve the records from the entity. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to use query entity records activity in UiPath. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to use delete entity record activity in UiPath. It means how to delete the records from the entity. So let's get started. As you can see here in the UiPath Data Service page, we have this vendor master and we have around 12 records available here. Now, if I need to delete the specific record, let's say V012, where the vendor ID is this. So this record, if I need to delete, then how to delete? So this I'm going to show you here. So we'll be using this vendor master entity for the practical example. So let's open UiPath Studio. Okay, so this we are not going to remove because I will show you here why we need this query entity records activity here. Okay, so let's first take this delete entity record, which is a part of uipathdataservice.activities. So if you have not installed that package, install it. And then if you have not imported this entity, then import it. If you don't know how to do all these things, watch the previous video. Now here you can see we have delete entity record. Let's select this entity from here. Now once we will select here, it says that entity and then record ID. Entity we have selected from the drop down. and only you can select the entity which is you have imported here. Now this delete entity record activity is used to remove a record from your data service entity, and it requires the record ID. What is this record ID? Basically, this record ID is the ID for the record to be deleted from the data service for the selected entity type. We can say this record ID accepts only the type GUID. What is this GUID? GUID, the full form of GUID is globally unique identifier. Every entity record is uniquely identify this GUID, this ID, the record ID you can say. So we must retrieve it before we can delete any record. Let me show you in the UiPath Data Service. So if you can see here, we have this ID which is a GUID. You can see system built-in field that cannot be edited or deleted. So this is uniquely identified, that globally unique identifier for each record. So for this record, this is unique. This is one ID assigned to this. For this one, this is a different one, right? So if you want to delete this V012 record, then you have to first get this ID. Okay, now I will show you how to fetch this ID and then you can delete that. So before deleting, you need to retrieve the GUID, that record ID from that specific entity. Okay, so in this example, I will use vendor master entity. So first, we need this query entity records. Using this, we can retrieve GUID. Okay, so vendor master we have selected. Now in the query, let's say in this example, I want to delete vendor ID V012. So I need to retrieve the ID, the record ID, or you can say the GUID for that V012. So I will delete this and I will put a filter like get the data where vendor ID equals to V012. So only this record I want to fetch and then I want to delete. Click save. Now what will happen? It will give us only one record where the vendor ID is V012, right? After that we have stored this in the output records, correct? Now to assign this in the GUID, because here it can accept only GUID. Let me open this advanced editor and you can see in argument GUID, which is record ID. So the variable type, that is system.GUID. You can search it from your variables type from variable or arguments. So let's cancel this. Okay, now let's create one variable with the name record to be deleted, something like that. Now change the variable type from string to system.guid. Okay, this one. Click OK. Now we'll take here one assign activity and then we'll pass here that variable which is GUID. Now we'll write here the output records, that collection which we will be getting from here. So this is your collection, you can see here list of vendor master. So we'll be passing here output records of 0 dot, we need to pass that record ID. So let's search. Okay, we don't have record ID, we have ID. So this is the ID as a GUID. You can see vendor master.id as a GUID. So this ID we need. Now this will give us the GUID which we are assigning to this record ID to be deleted, this variable. Either you can directly copy and paste here, or you can assign this to one variable and then pass that record ID to be deleted, this variable. Okay, now we are ready to delete that. So let's run this. Now V012, that record will be deleted. Okay, so successfully executed. Let's go to the UiPath Data Service and validate that. Let's refresh this, and you can see here V012, that record has been deleted now. Now same way, if you want to delete multiple records using this delete entity record activity, then you will have to get the list of records and then go with the for each row loop. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to use delete entity records activity in UiPath. You learned how to delete the records from the entity. In this video, I am going to show you how to delete multiple records in UiPath using delete entity records activity and using delete multiple entity records activity. So I will be showing two activities here. So let's get started. So you can see here, this is the vendor master entity. This entity we are going to use to delete the data, delete the records here, delete the multiple records. So currently we have 11 records here. Now let me open UiPath Studio. Okay, so earlier we used this delete entity record. Now we'll be using the same activity first to show you how to delete multiple records, and after that I will show you using delete multiple entity records. First we have to get the records from the entity, then only we can delete it, right? Okay, so first here in the query we'll write here vendor id equals to, so basically 12 we have already deleted, so let's put the v11 and then let's take one more entry where vendor id equals, I can say this time v010. Okay, so we are going to take here two entity records, right? Okay, now click save. So now this will be stored in this output records, and that is, you can see a list of vendor master, that is our entity. Now to go through this records, I'm going to take here for each, and this is for each, not for each row. Okay, because we are going to work on collections list value, and then here I will pass that output records. Now once we'll select here, automatically this will be argument type will be changed to UiPath Data Service dot vendor master. Now item is current item selected here. We'll take the same. Now we'll move this delete entity record here, and then I will say current item dot id. Okay. So now we are directly getting that value, that id here. So no need to pass this here to the another variable. We can directly take it in the loop. Now let's step into. So using query entity records, you can see here now we have two records, total two records we have fetched in this list. Okay, now we'll go step into, and then here we have current item dot id. So in the current item dot id, currently you'll see we have id for vendor id v010. Okay, so let's delete it. This is deleted. Now let's step over here, and this is done. Now let's open UiPath Data Service so that I can show you that 10 v010 and v011 has been deleted now. So let's refresh this, and then you will see here these two records is now deleted, right? Now we have only till 9, right? So we have only 9 records. 2 records have been deleted now. So let's stop this now. Now I'm going to show you the second activity to delete multiple records. What is that? That is delete multiple entity records. If we need to delete the records, the multiple records or any records we need to delete, then we need to first query the entity records. We have to get the records from entity. So we'll be using this, right? Now in the query, we'll put here we want to delete v010 9 V07 and then V0, let's put 8 here. So let's take one more entry equals, I can say V08. So now we are going to remove 3 records here, 7, 8, 9. Correct? You can change here. It's not like only take vendor ID, you can take anything, vendor name, email address, anything. Okay, so now we have 3 records. After that, we have stored this in output records. That's a list of, or you can say collection of vendor masters. Now we are not going to take this for each and then this delete entry. We'll just remove this. Okay, now we'll be taking this delete multiple entity records here. But before that, I can take this assign activity. Now select that entity, and now you can see here it's asking you to enter record IDs, not record ID, is IDs. So what is this? So this is a list of IDs for the records to be deleted from the data service for the specific entity. Okay, now we need to get the list of GUIDs for the records we are going to delete. So for that, from this collection, from this one, we have to take that. Either you can use for each and then get one by one and then assign it to the collection, like using add to collection activity, and then we'll have the collection ready and then you can use it here. But if you don't want to use another activity here, just take this assign activity here and then change this variable name for now, and this will be like list of, I will say list of records to be deleted. Now list of record, then variable type will be also changed. We'll be selecting here browse type. I will say system dot, and then we will select here list, and then from here we will select system dot GUID. It means the list of GUID. You can see here it should be like this. Now here in the value we will write an expression to get the list of GUIDs from this collection of records. Okay, now let's type here. We will say that output records, that collection which we are getting here, which has all the records along with the GUID. So we'll say dot, and then we'll be using select function, select of. So in this we'll say function, let me expand this here. Okay, select, and then we'll say function. Okay, and then we'll say v as a vendor, open close bracket, and then space, we'll say v that we have defined here as a vendor dot, we'll say ID. So this ID you can see as a GUID we selected. Now we need to convert this to the list. So we'll say dot to list, like this, right? Now click on save. Let's check one more time here. Now click save. Now this will give us the list of GUIDs, and it will store in this variable, and then this variable we are going to pass here as a record IDs. Okay, now we are ready to run this process. Let's run this. So you will see after this completion of process 7, 8, 9, these 3 records will be deleted. Let me refresh it. The board has already completed its work, but we have to refresh. Now you can see 7, 8, 9, that records have been deleted. Now we have only V1 to V5, V6, only 6 records we have here. So you learned how to delete multiple records using delete entity records activity, and how to delete multiple records using delete multiple entity records activity, right? You also learned how to get the list of GUIDs from the entity records. Hi friends, this is Manis Pandey. Welcome back to my series on UiPath Data Service. In our last video, you learned how to use delete multiple entity records activity in UiPath. You learned how to delete multiple records. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use get entity record by ID activity in UiPath Data Service. So let's get started. Here you can see UiPath Data Service and this vendor master entity selected here. You can see we have 6 records available here. Let me open UiPath Studio so that we can show you practical example. So we'll be using this get entity record by ID activity. Now what is the use of this get entity record by ID? Get entity record by ID activity helps us fetch a single record from an entity in our data service. All we need is the record ID, or you can see GUID. Get entity record by ID means it says that you can get the entity records by its ID. So it means we should have the GUID, that record ID available. Then only you can use this. The benefit of using this, we can pass the specific GUID and we can get the one record, the single record for the given record ID, and then based on that record we can get the details from that data. So let's say we are fetching the complete one record. It has the vendor ID, vendor name, address, email address, payment terms. There are multiple details. Again, this query entity records activity required here, because without that we'll not able to get the record ID. So let me first select entity, that is vendor master, and now we need to enter the record ID. So you can see here from the query entity records, I'm going to click on the filter and remove others, and now I'm saying that I want to get the records for this one where the vendor ID is V006. So I will update here V006. Now we'll have the one record in the collection. Now we'll have to get that specific record ID from that collection, and then we have to pass here. So either you have a record ID, that GUID added somewhere in the variable, then you can use that, or you have to use this query entity records activity and then get that record ID and pass it to this activity. Now we'll be taking this here, assign activity, that will be writing like this. So output records of 0 dot id, right? Save. So only this expression we need to write, and this will give us the specific id. Let me change that variable name and then type. I will say record id. Let me delete it. And this will be just system.guid. Now we'll be passing this variable here, record id, right? And now we will delete this. So here by putting this record id, we'll have that complete record in the output record. Now after that, if we need to get vendor name from that, so we can do it. So let's create one variable. So we'll say output record details, something like that. Now let's see the type of variable, that is vendor master. Okay, so this was collection of vendor master, list of vendor master, and now this is just a vendor master. Now after that, let's take one here, message box. Once we retrieve the record, we can access its field, right? So we'll be passing here that message box. For example, we can show the vendor name or the email address. So we will write here output record details, right? From here we are getting the details, then dot, and then it will give you the list of fields it has. So now I want to receive or get the vendor name, so we can get it here, and then further if we want to use this vendor name, we can use it here. So let's run this, and for V006 we should have the vendor name LMN traders in the message box. So let's wait for the message box and let's verify the vendor name. So later on you want to, let's say, compare this vendor name or compare the vendor ID and do some calculation or do some deletion, something you want to do, or some other process that you want to perform. Let's say the vendor ID B06, then you want to go with some other process steps. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath data series. In our last video, you learned how to use get entity record by ID activity in UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to talk about how to update entity records using the update entity record activity in UiPath Data Service. So let's get started. Here you can see we have this vendor master entity where we have 6 records. Now if you want to update the existing entity records, then you can do it here. So let's say manually if you need to update that, so you need to click on this edit button and then you can modify it, right? You can update and then this will be updated. Now same way, if you want to update these details, you can do it from UiPath Studio using one of the activity of UiPath Data Service package. So let me show you practically how to update the existing records details. Okay, so let me expand this uipath.dataservice.activities and let's take this activity, update entity record. Now, if you don't know how to get all these details, please I will recommend you to watch all the videos from this UiPath Data Service playlist. Now we have this update entity record activity. We'll click on that and select the vendor master. Currently we are in the field view. There are two options, record view and field view. So in the field view you will see all the fields here. If you click on add additional fields, you can select here multiple fields which you want to update. If you click on switch to record view, you have to put the expression in the input record and then based on that you can update here. Now this update entity record activity is designed to modify existing records in your UiPath data service entities, and this works same way you update in SQL, MySQL, in any of the database. So first I will go with the switch to fields view and then I will show you how to write the expression to update that existing records in the entity. So let's click on switch to fields view. Now we need record ID. So record ID basically is the GUID for which you want to update the record. So for this, to get the record ID, we'll be using query entity records. And then here we'll be putting a filter and then we'll get only one record ID. We'll click on that and we'll say where the vendor ID equals V006. If you don't know how to do this, watch the previous videos. There are multiple options here, multiple fields there. You can choose it as per your requirement. So currently I am only selecting filtering the data where the vendor ID equals V006 and then I will update that. So I need to update this vendor name from Element Traders to Element Traders 1. Now here, once this activity will be executed, that records will be and passed to this, stored to this output records, and this is collection of list of vendor master, that entity. Now we'll be taking the ID and pass to the record ID, and record ID variable type is GUID. Okay, and this record ID as a GUID will be passing here. So let me pass record ID. In vendor ID, if you want to change from V06 to V061 or some other data, you can update here. If you will not put anything, that field, that record will not be updated. Now I want to change only vendor name. Copy, and I will say add one here. Okay, now we are ready to run that. So let's run this. Now this has been executed. Let's go to the UiPath Data Service and let's refresh this. Okay, so this has been updated to LMN Traders 1. So this you have seen using field view in the update entity record activity. Now the second thing that I am going to show you using record view. So we'll click on switch to record view. Now here you need to enter the expression. This input records, we need to enter the expression so that it can update that specific record based on the record ID. Now if you remember, in the create entity record we had the same option where we clicked on switch to record view and then we enter that expression here. Same expression we'll be using here. So we'll say new entity name. So we have vendor master with space curly braces, open and close curly braces, one space, and select the field that you want to update. So update this entity. To update field, we can say vendor name equals to, now this time I will say paste here, I will keep only element traders. Currently we have data element traders 1. Now we'll change that from element traders 1 to only till traders. Okay, so let me open this here. Now I want to update vendor name equals to this. So this is the field name and this is the value. Now as per the query, as per the update query, we need to say where record ID equal to whatever record ID we are getting from here, right? So we'll say here comma space then id dot id equals to, so this id is the record id, right? Now we are getting that id from here and we are passing it to the record id. So we'll write here that variable record id. Now it will take this and update this value. It doesn't mean that it will be updated, right? It will not update that. This will just take as a reference. Okay, so vendor name will be updated with this, where the id equal to the record id that we are getting from this query entity records. Got it? Okay, if you want to add few more fields, you want to update few more fields here, then you can take it. So let's say I have this email id or I have this phone number, I want to update that. Okay, so I'll say here comma in between space, and this time I want to update phone number equals to, and this is, so I think phone number is, let's see, the phone number is text. So phone number is text, so we'll be putting the numbers in the double quotes and I will say this should be like 2 5 6 7 8 9, like that. So just update this random value. Now you can just see here. Now save this. Okay, now we can execute that. So let's run this. Okay, so this has been successfully executed. So let's go to UiPath Data Service. Let's go to data and then you can see here, let's refresh this. Now this has been updated with element traders and then phone number also has been updated here. Hi, This is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath Data Service series. In our last video, you learned how to use Update Entity Record activity in UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to talk about how to update multiple entity records in Data Service. We'll be using two activities to perform this demo. First, update entity record activity, and then second, update multiple entity record activity. So watch this video till the end, and this is really useful when you need to update several records at once, whether it's for correcting data or making changes. So let's get started. Here you can see we have this vendor master and we have around 6 records available here. If you want to edit the details of vendor name, vendor ID, phone number, address, any details, then you can do it in the bulk. So let me open UiPath Studio so that I can show you practically. So in the last video we discussed about the update entity record activity. Now let me show you how to update multiple records using this activity, update entity record, and then after that I will show you the second activity, that is update multiple entity record. Okay, so first we'll go with update entity record, and here you can go with the fields view or record view. So currently we are passing one value, but if you want to update multiple, then first we have to use this query entity record, and then we'll be getting the list of record from the data service which we need to update, which we want to update. Okay, so we'll be using query entity records activity, and then in the filter I will say that I want to update V05 and V06. So we have vendor ID equals V05. Second entry will take here vendor ID equals V006. Okay, so now we have two records here that will be stored in a collection in this output records. Now to get one by one records and update these multiple records, we have to take here for each activity, right? And then move this update entity record, and then in the list of item we need to write output records, right? Go to the properties, and it has automatically selected the argument type as a UiPath Data Service dot vendor master, that entity. Okay, now item selected as a current item. We'll play with this current item because every time it will have the records in this current item. Now here in the update entity record, so we'll pass here in the record ID current item dot, and then record ID we have in ID. Let me show you. So this is the ID field. So where we are getting this, the GUID, that record ID, right? So we are getting current item dot ID. So that ID will be passed here. So first time whatever ID will have here in this current item variable will be passed here, and then data will be updated for that GUID, that record ID, or that ID you can say. Entity will be selected from here. Email address, if you want to change, you can change it. So I'm saying that yes, I want to change. So I will put here double quotes, I will say updated email at email.com. Vendor ID, if you need to change, so you can change it. I will leave as it is. For the vendor name, so here we have element address. Now whatever data you will put here, that will be updated here. Now two things you can do. First, let's say your scenario is to update everywhere, put the same value in all the records, same update the same value. Let's say you have one field where you have to update the same exact same value here. Then you can loop through and then just update only one value, and then same value will be updated in each record. Let's say we have Excel file where we have the all the details added, like for email address data should be replaced with this, for vendor ID data should be this, vendor name data should be this. So you will read that Excel file and then you will have another for each row, and then every time it will be updated that way. You might need to add one condition to check that record. If vendor ID equal to this, then only proceed with that record which is available in the Excel file. So you have to play with this for each this collection and then for each row, and then you can update here. So this way you can update. So let me run this way and let me show you. So we have two records. Now first one is getting updated and this has been updated. Now let's go to the UiPath Data Service. Let's refresh this and you can see here V006 vendor name changed to the element address, and then this one is email ID is updated email at email.com. So let's check the record ID. So it's 3282. So 3282, this one. So this has been updated, right? Now I will show you using update multiple entity record, and then I will show you how to use that expression, how to write an expression to update multiple. So let's take that from data service, take here update multiple entity. Okay, now here we'll be using the same 5 and 6. We'll have in the collection, select the vendor master entity, and now here we have option to enter the input records. Now let's open in the advanced editor. You can see this is collection, collection of vendor master. So collection of data we need to pass here. Now this time we are not going to use for each item, that for each activity. We'll be directly passing that value here. Whatever data we are getting from here will be passing here. So how can we write that? So we need to write an expression here. Let me show you. We'll copy and paste here. Now you can see here we'll be using this from each item. Each item is just a variable. It's like for each item in the collection, like that. So we are using this expression to update that. So from each item in the output records basically this collection that we are getting from query entity records activity. Select new vendor master with, and then we'll start saying okay, where the item, where the ID equal to this. So each item is the variable which we are taking it from this output records. So dot ID. Now email address we want to update. So whatever value you want to update. So this, either you can update here hard coded value, or you can take it from your data storage or Excel or anywhere. So that will be in the variable, you can pass it here. Contact at element.com. This will be updated. Vendor name I will say element traders. Okay. If you want to add phone number, you can add here. Just put comma and then update the phone number. Now let's click save. Okay, and then this way we can update here. Okay, so you can write the expression like this. Now let me run that. Okay, so this has been executed successfully. Let me open data service. Let's refresh this, and you can see here this element traders have been updated here and on the second record as well. So 6 and 5. This contact at element.com has been updated here. So I hope you learned how to update multiple entity records, how to write this expression. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath Data Service series. In our last video, you learned how to use update multiple entity record activity in UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to learn how to use download file from record field activity in UiPath Data Service. So you will learn how to download file from the record fields. And this activity is extremely useful for scenarios where you want to retrieve and download files stored in the specific fields within your data service records, like vendor agreements, payslips, invoices, or any other document types you manage in your automations. So let's get started. So before using download file from record field activity, first you need to make sure that you have the specific field with the file type, and then you have a file uploaded to that specific record in the entity. Okay, so we are on the UiPath data service page. So I have this vendor master entity. Click on the data. Now just make sure that you have this any field with the type field file. So I have this vendor documents and I have already uploaded 3 PDF, 2 PDF file, 1 Excel file. Go to fields. Now make sure you have one record, one field with the type file. Now once you have created a field, you have added the records and you have uploaded an attachment to this field type, that record or that field, then you are ready to use that activity. So let's move to UiPath Studio so that I can show you how to download the file for the specific record ID. So we are going to use this download file from record field, which is a part of uipath.dataservice.activities package. We will select entity that we have imported here. If you don't know how to create a record, how to create an entity, how to create a field with the file type, how to upload the file, any attachment to the data service, then I will suggest you to first go through my previous videos. Now we will select here which we have imported. Now we have two more options which is required: record ID and the fields. So whatever fields is selected is set as a file type that will be showing in this field. And you can see here from the drop down, if you have multiple fields with the type file, then you will see multiple field here. Let's select here. So I have only vendor documents. You can see here we have only this vendor documents with the type file. Okay, the next one we need record ID. So this record ID will be useful here to download the attachment, that file for the specific ID from the UiPath data service. Okay, so how can we retrieve, how can we get the record ID? You will learn after this. So we need query entity records so that we can filter out the specific record and then we can get the record ID. So let's say I want to download the file for this vendor element traders. So I will take here a query and then I will say the vendor name is this or vendor ID is this, and then I need to download that. So based on this filter we can get this record ID and then we can download that. We will select here entity, then from the query we'll click on that. We have multiple options. You can choose it from here. If you don't know how to use this, you can go through the previous videos. So we will go with the vendor V006, this ID, and then we'll download that vendor documents for this specific vendor. Click save. Now we'll store this data, the records which we'll get from the data service, we'll store here in this collection of vendor master, this one. Now either you can loop through, you can use for each and then get one by one records and you can download. So if you want to download multiple, you can download from here. Now we need to pass the record ID. So I want the first record ID. So here I have only one data coming. So what I can do, I can take here one assign activity and then here we'll write output records of 0 dot will pass ID. So for the first record, we'll be getting the ID here. We have to assign to one variable, or you can copy this and you can paste here. So I will show you both the way. First, let's create one record ID. Okay. Now we created that variable, but we are getting error. It says that cannot assign from type system.guid to system.string. It means the variable that we created, the type set as string, but it says that it should be system.guid. So we'll change it to system.guid. So let's put only guid. Okay. Seems like there are multiple value we are getting after this guid. Let's search for the system.guid. Okay. Now there is no error. Now you can type here that variable, that is record ID. And now there is no error. Second, no need to create a variable. You can directly pass this value here. One more thing. So you are going to download the file. Now you need to provide the location. Like where do you want to save that file? If you are not going to pass and it's not showing any valid, any warning message, this icon, it means there is no issue, right? It can download that. So let me show you. Let's run that. So it will download file, this Excel file, because we are running for V006. Okay, so it has successfully executed. Now where is the file? Let's go to the download folder first. Okay, I do not see any file here. It means it has not downloaded. No, it has downloaded. But where? Let me go to the project. Let's open the project folder. And here's that. You can see the file has been downloaded. Now, I don't want to download the file to the project folder. I want to download to some specific folder where I want. So let's delete it. Now click on that activity, go to the properties of this activity. We are getting this option to file path. The full local path you want to download the file. So let's take one path. I will take this download. In double quotes, I will paste that path. Now, one more thing here. If there is any mistake in the file name, let's say I remove the S, then what's going to happen? It will create a file with this name, the last word, download. The file type will be only file, I think, right? It will not download that specific file. It will just create that. So make sure put that path, the file path, which is available, which exists. So let's save that and now run that. Okay, so let's check download folder. Here is that. The file has been downloaded and this is purchase order. This file has been downloaded for that specific vendor. So you learned how to download a file from the specific field from the entity records in the UiPath Data Service.
Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath Data Service series. In our last video, you learned how to use download file from record field activity in UiPath Data Service. Now in this video, we are going to learn how to download multiple files from the record field. Now let me open UiPath Data Service. Here in the vendor master entity, if you go to the data, then you can see here we have this vendor documents field and we have three records where we have the attachments, and I want to download all these attachments like this first, second, third, these all. So I want to download multiple attachments, multiple files. Here I will open UiPath Studio and I will show you practically here. So with the combination of query entity records and download file from record field activity, we will perform this demo. I need to download the files for those vendors where we have the attachments. So I will click on this. I will use this query entity records, select the entity, and then click on this filter builder option. And then here I'm thinking to put like if vendor documents dot name is not empty. Okay, so it will give us three records. Now we'll be using here for each activity. Let's drag and drop here. Okay, now type here that output records which we are getting from this query entity records activity, this one, which is a collection of, or you can say list of vendor master. It will have all these records. Now we will take this in the body. This is not required because directly we can use this instead of taking this record ID. So I can delete this assign activity. Okay, now we have current item. We'll go to download file, this activity, and then here we have record ID. So instead of taking it directly from the that collection, we'll pass that current item. Why? Because now here we are not only going to download the data, that attachment for first record, we are going to download for all this record where we have the attachments. So I will put it like current item, that loop, that item, and then dot id. So based on that id, it will download that file. Okay, and then here we'll select that vendor documents. If you don't know how to use this download file from record field activity, you can go through the previous video first. And then right side we have this path where the files will be downloaded. The documents, or you can say attachments, will be saved. Now let's run that. Okay, so this has been executed successfully. Let me open download folder. So you can see here we have all these three attachments saved. We have Excel file and two PDF file. So this way you can download multiple files from the entity records field. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath Data Service series. In our last video, you learned how to download multiple files from the record field in UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to learn how to delete a file from a record field in UiPath Data Service. And for the demo, we will use delete file from record field activity. This one, delete file from record field. So let's get started.
I'm going to show you UiPath Data Service. So here you can see we have three records V04, 5 and 6 where we have attachments, or you can say files, available here. So I'm going to show you how to delete this file from UiPath Data Service from the entity records. So I want to delete this V005. For this record I want to delete this attachment. Okay, so now save here, and now we'll have that record here. From this activity, delete file from record fill activity, we need to select entity. So select that entity which you have imported here. If you don't know how to do this, please go through my previous videos. Now here we have record ID. In the record ID, so we will take this output records. So here we will write that output records of 0 dot ID. So here the GUID, that record ID will be passed here as a record ID. And now from the field, we need to select that the field where we have the attachment, or from where you need to delete the attachment. Let's click on run. Okay, so this has been successfully executed. Let's open UiPath Data Service. Now let's refresh that. Okay, now you can see we are getting upload option here. It means there is no attachment here. So this way you can delete the files from record field. Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath Data Service series. In our last video, you learned how to delete file from a record field in UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to learn how to delete multiple files from a record field in UiPath Data Service. And for the demo, we will use delete file from record field activity. So let's get started. Here you can see on the UiPath Data Service page, we have this vendor master entity, and we have two records where we have this attachments, so payslip and this purchase order Excel file. I will show you how to delete these attachments. Let me open UiPath Studio. Before showing you the demo, the practical example, let me tell you one use case of deleting file from the record fields. Do you know what can be the use case of multiple deleting file from the record field in data service? Okay, I will tell you. The use case can be archiving and file deletion for compliance purpose. In many organizations, especially those dealing with the sensitive data like financial institutions or healthcare providers, there are policies that mandate archiving older files and removing them from the active records after a certain retention period. You will have seen in the queue as well. Let me show you. In UiPath queue, in the orchestrator, you can see we have a retention policy. So queue items can be deleted or archived after a specific retention duration. For example, a company might store customer contracts or vendor contracts or sensitive documents in a contract entity or vendor entity with a file attachment field. Once the contract has expired or after a predefined period like 1 year, 2 years, the company may need to archive the documents in an external storage for the compliances and delete the file from the active record in the UiPath Data Service to keep the active database clean up and up to date. So using the delete file from record field functionality, you can automate this archival and cleanup process, ensuring that only relevant and recent files remain in your system while old files are safely removed to reduce the data and meet compliance requirement. So here, with the combination of query entity records and delete file activity, will be performing this demo. So here in the query entity records, we need to select that entity from where we need to delete that records. Now in the query, we need to put the filters like the query. So let me delete it, and now here add an entry. So if you want to go, you want to delete based on the vendor ID or vendor name or some status, like status is active, inactive, like that. So let's say a status is inactive, so those files should be deleted. Or there are some filters or conditions. If you want to go with that, you can go. Here I'm going to select the vendor documents.name is not empty, or like vendor documents is not empty. So I want to delete all those attachments. So I will say if vendor documents is not empty, so those records it will fetch and give me in the output records. Okay. So based on the record, I can say that we have two records, and then we'll be deleting from there. So I'm going to use for each, and then I will move this delete inside the body. I will put here output record, that we are getting it from the query entity records, this one. Now here once we'll put that variable, automatically it will change that argument type. Now we have current item as an item. Now this we will use, and we'll pass here current item dot id. So for this specific id, the documents will be deleted, and the entity will select here the field we need to choose, like from which field you need to delete that. But before watching this video, I will recommend you to watch the previous videos. Okay, so now we are ready to delete these files. Let's run this. So let's open UiPath Data Service so that we can validate the records. Okay, so let me refresh it. And now let's see here. You can see there are no files here.
Hi friends, this is Manish Pandey. Welcome back to another video in our UiPath data series. In our last video, you learned how to delete multiple files from a record field in UiPath Data Service. In this video, we are going to learn how to use upload file to record field activity in UiPath Data Service. That means you are going to learn how to upload files to this UiPath Data Service to this specific records here. We are here on the UiPath Data Service page. This is vendor master entity, and we have 6 records. Now we have one field that is vendor documents. So make sure that you have at least one field where the field type is file. Then only you can use that activity. And now I'm going to show you how to use that activity, and then we are going to upload the file to this vendor ID V006. And for that, let me open UiPath Studio. Now, as you know that without record ID, we'll not able to perform further. We'll not able to perform that demo. So first we have to use this query entity records activity. We will select the entity, and from the query, I'm going to select that I want to upload the file to the vendor ID V006. Okay, you can select it from there. If you don't know how to use this one, I will recommend you to watch my previous videos. Okay, now we'll save this. We'll store that in the output records. We'll go to this package UiPath Data Service.activities, and then we will select this upload file to record field activity. Okay, this activity is used to upload a file to a specified field of an entity record from the data service. Here we will select that entity. Now there are three things here: record ID, field, and then file resource. Record ID, we will take it from this collection of vendor master entity. I will write here output records
of 0 dot id. So it will give us the record id for the first record, output records of 0, right? And we have here only one condition, so we'll have only one record, right? Now we got that record id. Now we need to select the field. So we have the drop down. If you have multiple fields where the field type is file, you will see here. I will select this. Now the file resource is, it means the file which you want to upload, and the file size cannot exceed 10 MB. And if attachments, like the file is already attached to that specific record, then whatever file path you will pass here, that will be replaced with this file, right? Now you have to put that file path here. Now if you click on this advanced editor, you can see here the file, the variable type will be I resource, the file resource. What you can do here, we have to write here one expression, local resource dot, and then we will say from path, open close bracket, and then here inside we need to pass that local path as a string, as a local local resource. Okay, so path we can copy which file you want to upload. So let me go to that file. So I want to upload this payslip, this file I want to upload to that V006. So right click, copy as a path, and then we can paste in the double quotes. So we copied as a path, so already it comes along with the double quotes. Okay, now we are ready to use this activity. Now one more thing, if you don't want to use here this one, this variable, then what you can do, let's remove it. We have this folder, right? It will browse, show you one window to choose that file. So let's say I'm going to choose this any file, click on open, and then once you'll open this, you can see automatically it is taking that path with the local resources from path expression, right? We just need to replace the file which we want to upload. Okay, save that. Now we are ready to run that. So let's run this. Now this has been executed successfully. Let's open UiPath Data Service to validate. Let's refresh this. Let's go to that specific field. And now you can see here this PDF file payslip.pdf has been uploaded to the specific vendor ID, the V006. Same way, if you want to upload the files to multiple records, you can do it. There are multiple way you can, take a Excel file. In that you can mention the vendor ID and then the file path. So based on the vendor ID, which file from which location you want to upload. So you will read that, and then using for each row, you can loop through one by one, and then here also you can take multiple records and then use for each activity, loop through one by one record ID, and then check that if vendor ID is V001, then upload this, V002, then upload this file, like that, based on the your Excel tracker. So you can upload file to the multiple records. I hope this is useful and you understood this one. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more UiPath tutorials. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.